All of you come from humiliated origins. In other words, Allah is saying human beings, their start in this world is something embarrassing. And the only reason we have honor in this world is because Allah gave it to us. أَلَمْ نُهْلِكِ الْأَوَّلِينَ ثُمَّ نُتْبِعُهُمُ الْآخِرِينَ. That was the first question, the first group of questions together. Didn't we destroy the earliest nations and we followed them up with later nations that came? Now, on that particular question, there's two interpretations, and we discussed one of them. One of those interpretations was this is referring to nations that got destroyed when prophets came. Right, that was one, and we discussed that. We looked at the ayat in the Quran where the people of Nuh denied, and then Allah replaced them with another nation and another nation. Right, that was one set of interpretations. There's another set of interpretations, and that is this is referring to all nations. Earlier nations were destroyed or killed or died, and then others came and took their place. There were ancient empires. Even today, there are ruins of different empires, and later on, other people come and take their place. Right, so this has been going on throughout history. Right, so this is something that is found as a living phenomenon, and anybody who studies history knows this. Now, to understand that a little bit better, I'm going to kind of summarize a formula that Ibn Khaldun had. I think his idea has a lot of merit. He basically looks at human civilization and divides it. I'm going to use my own words to describe Ibn Khaldun. So if you read Ibn Khaldun, you'll find the smart version. I'm going to give you the dumb version. Okay, so the dumb version is you basically have city people and you have village people. Okay, it's people that live in the farm and the village and the mountains, etc. It's that life. And then there's people that live in cities. Okay, and the people that live in villages or in the desert, the tribe life, those people have a very strong sense of connection to their neighbors, to their family. They have a very strong connection to their history, their family tree. My grandfather was this, his grandfather was this, his grandfather was this. They're very proud of their heritage. They're very careful about protecting the family and protecting the tribe and protecting the culture. They're very simple also. They're also very principled. We don't do things like this here. We do things like this here. They're very big on respect and honor. Honor is a big deal to them. Tradition is a big deal to them. Loyalty is a big deal to them. And if they're enemies with someone, they're hard enemies and they're going to stay enemies for many generations. All of these things come with the village life. And this village life has existed in civilizations around the world, including Arabia. Arabia is not different from that. The Qaba'il, had the same kind of culture. But this exists in Afghanistan. This exists in Indonesia. This exists in anywhere you go in the world, you're going to find this kind of phenomenon. Okay. But then there is, and they have like I said, they have a very strong sense of identity, and they don't have a lot of government. This is another important thing. They don't have a lot of government. Because they don't have a lot of government, they have a lot of emphasis on morals. Because it's not the government that's making you do the right thing, or the police, or the camera, or the taxes, or whatever. It's the way you were brought up, and the expectation from your elders and your family and your community. There's a moral we have our morals, we have our code, and we live by this code, right? This is the life of the Bedouins and the farmers and the village people. But then society advances, and then some of those villages start growing into cities, and they start becoming more and more civilized and developed. And city life is driven not by family; it's driven by economic functions. So you don't inherit the family business. The son wants to go and become a carpenter, and the other one wants to go and learn poetry, and the other one wants to become an artist, and the other one wants to become an architect or whatever else, right? So now you are moving to the city for economic reasons. Most of the time you're cut off from the larger family because of economic reasons. It's also more expensive to live in a city. So now the whole family can't afford to move. And even if they move, they're going to move closer to their work, and you'll move closer to your work. You can't just get together and do the same work together in the city. It doesn't work that way because the economic forces are pushing you apart. So family life starts breaking up. And this has been happening for generations and generations. This is not something new. The very rich people, they can buy very, very big houses and mansions and villas and things like that, and they can stay together with their whole family. But most of the others, they're going to work, and their family lives somewhere else, and they live somewhere else. They're doing the work and sending the money back, or some kind of disconnect has happened. Of course, the modern version of that you're also familiar with. People are going to, for example, New York to study at New York University. Is their whole family moving with them? No. Somebody got a job as a programmer, and they're going to move to this big corporation office, head office in downtown in some city, in Melbourne, in Sydney, in Paris, somewhere, in London. But is the whole family going to be able to move with them? No, they're barely able to afford the rent for themselves to make ends meet, and they're going to be isolated. Now there's a bunch of, let's just say, single people. There's a bunch of young people. There's a bunch of business people. They are not brought together by family and values and history and heritage. That's not what brought them together. Economics brought them together. The company brought them together. The job brought them together. The government brought them together. All government employees, et cetera, right? So these people, what's bringing them together is usually economic interests or some kind of government citizenship type thing. Which do you think is a stronger sense of connection to other human beings? The tribal connection or the city connections between people? By far, the tribal connections are stronger. So what cities do is they start creating, people that live in cities, they start developing a more and more and more individualistic worldview. They think first about themselves, at most about one more person or two more people. Even if things go too far, even their parents might become a burden for them. Their children might become a burden for them. And is that happening nowadays, right? People are saying, I don't want to have kids. Why should I have kids? It's too much work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm happy the way I am. Hyper individualism happens. When that individualism happens, then that society is not unified. They're not united. Why? Because they're each a bunch of individuals looking for their own thing, while the tribes are very, very united. And these individual people, they also don't have a unified moral code. They don't have one thing that ties them together. We're all going to follow these rules. The only reason they're following the rules is who's watching. The cops are watching, the government's watching, or you're going to get fired. That's the reason they're following the rules, right? So what happens is these societies that don't have a strong, the word asabiya is a bad word, but it's also a good word, a strong bond with each other, these societies start becoming weak. Because strength comes with unity, and these societies, the more they develop, the more disunited they become. The more disunited they become. Compare that to the village. You have connections with your whole family. You know your neighbor. You know your neighbor's neighbor. You go to Friday. You know everybody at the Friday prayer. You go to Eid. You know everybody at the Eid prayer, etc., etc. Right? Some people that live here, they may be from a village in Algeria or Tunisia or wherever else, and you'll go for the first time. You're 18 years old. You've never been there before. You go there for the first time, and you'll meet some old man in the masjid. What's your name? And you'll say, yeah, Hamidi. Oh, Hamidi, I know your uncle. I know this one. He's like, how you know all these people? I don't even know my uncle. And you meet your uncle for the first, because they're all connected. Everybody knows everybody, And so what happens over time is developed societies, they start becoming weaker. And the tribal society, there's a friction between the two. And eventually, and by the way, the city societies, usually because the money's flowing into them, right? So because money's flowing into the cities, poverty is being created in the villages. So as the cities are getting richer, the villages are getting poorer. So eventually, this economic and social and by the way, of course, city people think of village people as what? As less, as inferior, right? Eventually, this friction gets big enough that the village people rebel and they fight and they win over the city people and they form a new government. They form a new, they get rid of the elite. They get rid of the elite and they form a new society. And they say, this society is going to be based on our principles that we learned from the village, our justice. We're going to have justice. But now, over time, they become the new city. And they become hyper-individualistic. And by the time they do that, the people that are being left behind come and attack them. And this cycle sort of continues. And a nation is the most closest to destruction when they're rich, become so rich in the cities, they become so rich and that they are now worried that they're going to lose their wealth because cities also start getting a lot of poverty. So even though cities have nice buildings and streets and all of that, cities start getting filled with poor neighborhoods, crime. And the rich people start getting worried that I'm going to lose all my wealth. So what they do is they start saving their money more and more. They start saving it or putting it somewhere in a safe or, like Qarun type thing, right? And when they do that, then they are concentrating the wealth in the hands of a few. And even within the cities, people are getting poorer and poorer. It creates a divide in the classes. You might have heard the term bourgeois, right? And eventually there will be a revolution. And there will be a violence against those that are hoarding all of the wealth, right? So this is actually a cycle that goes on in the world. Now, the Quran comes along and targets the political and financial elite. Now you can see why. They start becoming a cancer in society. Are there not major corporations and CEOs of the couple of hundred corporations in the world that are now holding maybe 60, 70, 80% of the entire world's wealth while people are starving? Is that not the case, right? And this is the new version of that, but this has always existed in some way, shape, or form, right? And when that reaches a tipping point, revolutions happen and a new cycle begins. So when Allah says, "Alam nuhliki al-awwalin, thumma nutbi'uhum al-akhirin, kadhalika naf'alu bil mujrimin," it's when people become a certain level of mujrim, then this is what happens. Jawad and I were discussing. He was telling me about some Vice documentary he saw about people that work on yachts. Those big rich people yachts, and some guy who works in the hotel industry, and they were both talking about it's the worst when the super rich come to the hotel or the super rich take the yacht, right? Because the super rich, when they come, there are no rules. You will see them do the worst things. They will have the most immoral behavior. They will treat other human beings like insects. Like you've never seen worse human beings in your life than the super duper rich when they're partying among each other. You'll see behaviors you couldn't imagine that human beings would do, and that's their normal. That's their normal when they're let loose, right? So by the time that looks like anybody would see that and say mujrimin. Anybody would see that and say that. The Quran uses two words for these people, mujrimin and mutrafin also. Mutrafin, people that are drowned in luxury. People that are drowned. Oh my God, my helicopter's late. Like those people, right? So, this mentality leads to destruction, and Allah is saying there's a cycle, and when you hit that cycle, your own wealth, your own luxury becomes the reason you got destroyed. It leads to your own destruction. So this is alam nuhlikil awwalin thumma nutbi'uhum al-akhirin. And then when he says waylun yawma idhil mukaththibin, it's kind of tied to this reality now, especially those at the top of those societies that fell. The ultimate wail falls upon them. So there's a connection now. Also, waylun yawma idhil mukaththibin was about Judgment Day, right? But when these nations get destroyed, they get a taste of that wail even in this life. So it now starts having a double meaning in the akhirah and in this life when they experience that. Okay. So now we get to this really heavy question. There was about the nations that rise and fall, or the nations against the prophets who got annihilated. Those were the two interpretations. But now Allah says, "Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin." Didn't we create you from weak liquid, from weak water? That would be a raw translation. Didn't we make you from weak water? The first thing you'll notice here is we're coming back to you. We're coming back to the word you. The previous ayah said, we destroyed the earliest ones and we will make others follow in the same path because that's how we deal with criminals. Who was the next ones that are going to follow in the same path? The Quraysh. Now it's time to talk to Quraysh directly. So he addresses them directly and says, didn't we create you from weak water? He's referring to sperm. Isn't that where you came from? Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. Now, the word mahin is really interesting. Mahin actually comes from, it's related to da'if. So, amhan al-rajul ad'afahu, like to weaken somebody. They used to use the word mahin for a horse that couldn't impregnate anymore. So the horse that's become infertile is mahin. Allah uses the word for infertile to describe the pregnancy, which is odd because you would use the word fertile for pregnancy. Allah is using the word infertile for pregnancy as if to say even what is sitting inside the womb of the to-be mother isn't itself capable of doing what it does. It's too weak. Allah is the one who gives it the power to produce life. Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. The water itself was weak. And there's another important consideration here when Allah says this. The Arabs were very proud of their heritage, what nasl they come from, who my father was, who my father's father was, who our tribe was. Every poem began with the atlal, and then it began talking about their fathers, right? كَذِكْرِكُمْ آبَاءَكُمْ أَوْ أَشَدَّ ذِكْرًا in the Quran. And Allah says, let me tell you something about your fathers, weak water. That's pretty insulting, isn't it? And if you're coming from a poor family, you may not find this insulting because the rich people insult you all the time anyway. But if you're a rich one, you're one of the elites. Nobody looks at you in the eye. And now you're being told directly, weren't you made from weak water? Oh, what did you say? What did you say about my family? What? It's a direct insult on the lineage. Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. So what is behind this question? There's, sometimes a question is loaded, right? You could say the question has kinaya in it. The way I would describe that in simple English to you is the question is loaded. So let's explain how is this question loaded. First of all, are you made from some different liquid than the people who died before you? Because they were also made from water and they also came and went and they got destroyed. Are you made from some super fluid that you're not going to be destroyed? Is that the idea? Then are you made from a higher origin than the people you consider inferior? Because you're the elite tribe. Were you made from some special non-weak fluid that other people weren't created from? You're all of your origins are the same. All of you are the same. Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. All of you come from humiliated origins. In other words, Allah is saying human beings, their start in this world is something embarrassing. And the only reason we have honor in this world is because Allah gave it to us. If Allah had not given it to us, our starting point is humiliation in this world. It's ma'in mahin. Are you in this position of power because that's how you've always been? Allah says, Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. So you think you're so powerful and so rich and nobody can look you in the eye and nobody can question your leadership. And were you always like this? No, I've always been. Really? Even when you were inside your mom, you were like this? It was so powerful? I want you to use your imagination a little bit for a second. There was a time when I and you, everybody in this room, was somewhere inside our mother's belly. And actually, at some point, she didn't even know we were there. My mom didn't know I was there, but I was there. Lam yakun shay'an madhkur. You weren't even something worthy of being mentioned. In fact, even your mother who loves you so much, to her, you didn't exist. You were nothing. And you were inside her and you were nothing to her. She had no emotional attachment to you and she had no love for you and she had nothing. And now we're inside, there was this little drop and we start to form. And as we start to form, I imagine I can't remember what that was like, but if I could, I don't have a mouth, I don't have eyes, I don't have hands. I'm just stuck in this place, I'm just between these organs, just sitting over here, completely, utterly helpless. Is that a state of power? No. The home itself is actually pretty humiliating. The home in which I was living itself is humiliating. And I'm utterly, utterly powerless. Did I deserve to be engineered? Did I deserve to get my eyes developed, my hands, my fingers, my feet, my body, my mind, my tongue, my teeth? All of the stuff all the bones that are being developed, the ears that are being developed. Am I entitled to any of that when that's happening inside? Allah says, Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. When you say, I got money, that's why I deserve to be treated better. I deserve this, Did you deserve to be engineered the way you were engineered inside your mother? Did you deserve it? You weren't even remembered by anybody. Where did your rightfulness come from? It's the most humbling. And not only is it humbling, it makes a believer, from a disbeliever's perspective, it's humbling. From a believer's perspective, it should make me and you extremely grateful. Ya Allah, I was nothing. This is my origin. This is what I was. And this was my home. And anything, the number of things that can go wrong in a pregnancy, not just between life and death, that's the extreme, but deformities, brain deficiency, like any kind of disability, genetic disorder, all kinds of things can happen. Miscarriage, premature delivery, all kinds of things can go wrong. And yet, here we are. And Allah is asking us, so you think you got here on your own? Alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. And after asking this question, isn't it true that this is kind of a strange thing? It's like we didn't have a life. We weren't alive. And Allah started creating us out of death. We didn't have an existence, and Allah brought us to life. So we were resurrected. We were created and brought to life. If the question in the surah is about being brought back to life, it's as if Allah is saying, didn't I already do that to you? Haven't I already resurrected you from a fluid? Why do you think it's difficult for me to resurrect you from the dirt? It's just a continuation of the same phenomenon. So, alam nakhluqkum min ma'in mahin. Hey guys, you just watched a small clip of me explaining the Quran in depth as part of the Deeper Look series. Studying the Quran in depth can seem like a really intimidating thing that's only meant for scholars. Our job at Bayyinah is to make deeper study of the Quran accessible and easy for all of you. So take us up on that challenge. Join us for this study, the Deeper Look of the Quran, for this surah and many other surahs on BayyinahTV.com under the Deeper Look section.